One of the first kinds of output you're probably going to want to make in many databases, especially a database like a customer database, will be labels. So we'll define some labels. Since I don't have a file name set, if I go into define output, and I'm going to see all the files, well, I want to define some output for the VG customer file. Okay, and there are no outputs set. So let's hit enter for new, and let's give it a name. Since we're going to define an output format that will make us some labels, one for every customer, let's, why not? We'll call it labels. Okay. Now FilePro is asking me what type of format. This is the overview. I gave you a little overview of these types of formats. This is not going to be a report that has totals and subtotals. It's not going to be a full page form or other. It's obviously going to be a mailing label. So I picked that. Now FilePro wants to know how wide are these labels. Let's assume that we have standard 80 character wide labels that would print on a regular little dot matrix printer, an Epson little 80 character carriage or whatever, and we'll start with 80 characters wide. And here it wants to know the width for each form, for each label. I'm not going to put that. Right now I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to use those 1 inch high labels. They usually come 2 up. They're 1 inch high. And 1 inch high on regular labels usually means it's 1 line per inch or 6 lines per inch. So the number of lines for this particular page of this particular label would be 6. In other words, there are 6 lines on a 1 inch high label. And now here it's going to say how many of these labels do I want across the page, how many forms. I'm going to say they're 2 up. FilePro will do the little division for me and it knows what to put in here, how many forms across, because we're telling it. I don't need to know the width. FilePro will divide 80 characters by 2 up and probably give me 40 characters for each label. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just going to do it this way. That's the way I do it. I don't bother about typing in that width. Okay. Change the password? No. I'm going to leave that. One back. Unwanted blank lines, I'm going to say no for that. And this one is, do I want an alignment check? No, that's if you're printing like a check or something that has to line up exactly. You want to print a bunch of X's on the form to make sure everything's right before you actually do your printout. I don't use those. We're not going to need that. For a printer name, well, we just created a printer called VG Printer. Now remember that when we pick that printer, it's going to print into a file, not at a printer. Once everything looks good, then I'll pick a printer where I'm really going to print the labels on. But I'll be able to at least look at my output format and make sure it looks the way I want before I actually direct it towards the printer and start wasting labels if it's not right. So okay, I'm going to press escape now. The other things are not important. The beginning, the initialization, print number, and the terminator number. Those are things we'll learn about in a while. Okay, I'm now pressed escape, and it wants to know how do I want to sort. When I pick these records and I run this report, when I pick this report, or this output format, I want to print the labels. It wants to know how I want them sorted. Well, let's sort them by last name. So, we get alphabetical by last name, and we might as well also sort after last name. Let's sort by first name. That means, obviously, if you have a couple Smiths, one Robert and one John, John's going to come first, then Robert. Well, in other words, sorting first by last name, and then another bit of sorting by first name. So things really, truly come in a direct alphabetical order. We have 8 levels of sorting here available. We could also sort by, other fields if we wanted to. At this point, we don't need to. Sometimes you might want to sort your labels by company and then name. You might have, if you deal with big companies or United Airlines or something, you might have 200 people in that company you want to send labels to, and then send labels to the next company and so forth. You could first sort by company, then last name, then first name. But in this case, we're just going to sort by last name and first name. Okay, it shows us the form. This is the label form. This is just a little free form thing. We're just going to design one form or one label. And how do you do that? It's just like the screen painter, the screen designer in Define Screens. If you press F6, which is mentioned on the bottom, you can see the fields which you're working with. And this is all the fields in the VG customer file. And I'm going to want to print the last name, the first name, the company, the address, and so forth. City, state, and zip. Okay, let's just do that. To print the first name, I know I want to print field 1. Now I'm going to go over here a number of characters, and if you notice it's telling me how many characters. Well, I pressed F6 to look at the fields. Now I'm going to resolve the fields with F5 to see how long they are. Well, first name's 10 and last name's 15. So if I want to go over here, I can go over to the 10th character, and that's as far as my first name's going to go. I'll put a space here, so I have a little space between the first name and the last name, and I'll put the last name. Print that there. Okay, here we're going to print the company name, which is field 3. Here we'll print the first address line. Here we'll print the second address line, and here we'll print city, which is, let me take a look, field 6 for city. I'm going to resolve it. 15 characters. Okay, so I'll go over to the 15th position. That's where it's going to end. Here's a space, and then I'll put 17. I'll put state, which is 7. We know state's only 2 characters long. I'll put a space anyway. And then, I mean, this is where the state's going to print. 1, 2. Here would be a space after it, and now I'm going to print the zip code, which is field 8. Okay, now realize what I've done. I've got first name here. I go all the way over and I print the second name, and here's the company address, city, state, set. Okay, let's take a look at this and see what this looks like. I save this format by pressing escape, and I'm Xing out of it. We're back at the FilePro main menu. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how we can run this FilePro format that we just printed. That we just designed, rather. I'll show you in the next lesson how to run the output.